Good morning, everyone. Pricing a property correctly in New York City is crucial for a successful sale, as overpricing can lead to stagnation. This is called aspirational pricing. Underpricing may leave money on the table, or does it? The city's real estate market is highly competitive and varies by neighborhood, property type, and economic conditions. Sellers should analyze recent comparable sales, consider current inventory levels, and factor in buyer demand. A well-priced home generates strong interest, often leading to multiple offers or a quicker sale and greater attendance at open house. Additionally, working with an experienced real estate professional ensures strategic pricing that aligns with market trends, maximizing both exposure and return on investment. And at the table with me today are Andrew Phillips from Brown Harris Stevens, Jessica Silva from Brown Harris Stevens, John Hudak from Compass, and Amelia Gewirtz, also from Brown Harris Stevens, and they join me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. I am Vince Rocco, and this is Talking New York Real Estate, the state of our industry.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Investors, this is your moment. I'm Scott Nadler with Cross Country Mortgage, and whether you're starting out or growing your empire, I've got the loan solutions to make your next move a success. Let's talk today.
Okay, we are back, everybody. We're talking today about apartment pricing, how to price apartments well. I like to say perfectly well, so we can sell them quickly. But turning on the news this morning, which these days I don't like to do in the morning because I like to leave my house very happy. But anyway, the housing news this morning was a bit dim, okay? And it said around the nation, and in New York City in particular, the housing market will suffer this year. Maybe not as bad as it did last year, but will suffer this year. And the renters who are currently renting in New York City are planning to stay because even though the rental market is booming and the rents are high, renters can't see themselves becoming buyers because right now monthlies are too expensive, interest rates are still not down, and they're freaked out, so they're deciding to rent. In the interim, we do have many people who are buying. We like to see. And so we're going to talk about how we can get those buyers back to the table more than ever. And it really comes down to pricing properly. Amelia, let me start with you because, we talk about, and you mentioned it before, we talk about the markets that we are in or we have been in. Where are we today? What kind of a market are we in today? Just in general, whether it's high end, low end, in between, where are we?
Who knows?
That's my answer.
Right, exactly. We're in multiple different markets. We're definitely an emotional market. If I was going to say one thing that I think is connecting every aspect, because the 4 million and up market is actually pretty active. That being said, I will tell you, Andrew and I right now, literally in this moment in time, real time, are having two different multiple offer situations. One, which is exactly what Urban Digs, when they came to the office, who I love Urban Digs, but they said, the market where it needs work, nothing's going on. The market under 2 million, nothing's going on. We have an apartment right now, estate sale, needs new kitchen, 2 new bathrooms, and we're on our third or fourth offer just as of this morning. And, we did price it as nobody has the bandwidth to do work, and you have to pay to live there elsewhere, and you have to pay to renovate the 3 to 6 months. That's what all the buyers say. You're not taking into account multiple offers. So, and then we have something else that's also under 2 million, the opposite. So I would just say it's emotion. If you create a story or a brand for the apartment, it should get offers. I think it's all about price and also the emotion. Do you walk in and does it make you happy?
Well said. And last week we were talking about open houses in general. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they heavily attended? Or are they not? And one of the things that came up in that conversation last week was recs, as you just described, aren't really selling because people want to, at the current price points, buy something, not spend any
Move
money,
in.
and just move right
Yep.
in because they don't have that extra few dollars any longer
Right.
to take on a renovation and all that goes with a renovation. So you are that estate sale is priced at what?
So it's asking 1,299, which
And room count?
4.5,
Okay.
and it's street views. It's not open city. We did have them paint it white, and they did buy. I call it Walmart furniture. You know, back in the day, Andrew and I were, you know, because I have an art background.
They're not Walmart agents, trust me. Okay.
But you know, he's got a fashion background. I have an art background, so
Yeah.
we stage for free for all our sellers as long as they pay for the rental furniture. But there are 2 or 3 pieces we have found over the last 2 years that they are sort of like Walmart furniture. It's a great table and chairs, and it's a great couch. Throw it in, it gives a sense of scale, and it's cheaper than renting furniture. And this estate did that. They listened. They glazed the tub, and it's pretty shocking what's going on right now, specifically because everybody says everybody does not have the bandwidth to do any work.
Correct. And they're
Yet
kind of
they are
threatened.
they're willing to do it here.
Well, but again, priced right.
Yes, it is priced
And
right.
they will take it on because you know they'll find themselves with that extra cash
Right.
that's needed to do that. Is it a co-op or a condo? By
It's
the
a
way,
co-op.
okay, there you have it, Andrew. So in you and Amelia work together as partners, and you have for 100 years. As
A
long as I
little
know.
less than that.
A little less than I was 98 years, whatever.
Okay.
I can't remember, but I've known you guys forever. We all work
But
in the
I'm
same
12.
office. No, I'm 12. You can't be 12. Anyway, so what neighborhoods do you see are moving better than others?
I think
or
one of
are
the
there any?
one of the things that's important to remember about with the news, everyone's talking about, that's 6 months ago. By the time it's a story, it's yesterday's news. So the market has moved on. And I think part of the success is that people aren't remembering in the rearview mirror 3% anymore. That now has faded away, and they're in reality world.
Do you think they are?
I think they are beginning to now, and I think we're seeing it by these multiple offers on the Upper West Side. So each market has a sub-market, and I think that we're starting to see now people going, 3% is not my lifetime. Do I want to buy? Do I want to be a permanent resident of New York? And I think that market is now going, okay, let's go out there, make sure that thing is realistically priced for the market. Doesn't mean cheap, but it means realistic for what it is.
Yeah, I'm doing a presentation tomorrow night to shareholders of a co-op on the Upper West Side where I live, and one of the things that Greg gave me some great information and numbers. The Upper West Side seems to be moving rather nicely, and what I'm finding is that when things are priced correctly, and we're going to talk a lot more about that as we go through the show today, people become even more interested. And I'm curious to hear from these guys here, because I think I agree with you where the 3% is in the rearview mirror, or people are starting to think, well, all right, that was yesterday. We can't live in yesterday time. We have to kind of move forward. John, do you think that's really accurate? Do you think that people are still kind of lingering with, well, I wish it still were, or are they moving on to say, all right, 6.2, 6.5, whatever the number is? Although recently I heard a 7-year fix was down to 5.7.
I was going to say
which is not bad.
I took a buyer out last night and had a 5 point something
Yep.
like 7 interest rate, and
Yep.
these were people we'll come back in a second. They're living in a rent stabilized apartment, but they want to own so bad that they're willing to leave the rent stabilized apartment. Got this 5
That's
point,
big.
right? Got this interest rate. And what I haven't seen, and I think this is what Andrew was saying about the interest rate in the rear view mirror, I said they have to do a condo probably, or a condop, because they did a 6-year. And I was like, well, I don't know if a co-op's going to do 30-year. They're usually looking for that 30-year. But they were like, okay, well, we're going to do 6 years, 5.7.
Well, I think co-ops have to get in line with where we are today and what the market is talking about today. Yeah, I agree with you. 30-year fix is what everybody. Whenever I owned a co-op, that's all I did. However, to get in, you might have to start low. So, in your base, and you're talking to people, conversation, where are their heads with the current interest rates or where we've been the last, I guess it's now almost 2 years.
Yeah. I think people are a lot more comfortable with where rates are now, to your point. I think when it was reaching 7, a little over 7, people were hesitant. But a lot of people that I'm working with need to move, right? So what they may not want a 6.5% mortgage, but they're moving, whether it's kids, whether it's school, whether it's job. So it's part of it is like it's kind of the new norm now. And also it's the motivation of, hey, I need more space. I'm having a 3rd or 4th kid, school zone, anything like that. So I think I'm seeing a lot of people that have been on the sidelines for a while that are re-engaging just because the rates are kind of where they are.
I agree with both of you, and even what Andrew said before. I think it takes people time, and we all know how people in this town anyway think about stuff when it comes to real estate. It's going to just take time before people say, hey, it's not going to change, or it is what it is. It's time to move. And as you said, people have to move, want to move. It's school related, it's kid related, it's whatever. People get transferred in, right? And they've only owned.
The other part of that is that we're finding a tremendous amount of the deals are done in cash.
Well, I was going to get to that. Yeah.
We have seen, even with these 2 multiple offer situations, a lot of empty nesters, all cash, coming back to the city after they've raised their kids, and they've got the cash, and they're coming in because they're like, I'm bored in the suburbs.
Yeah.
I think that there are also people recognizing now that it actually is a good time to buy because when the interest rates were historically low, you had a lot of bidding wars. People were overpaying. Now you're getting a little bit more of a realistic pricing situation where people recognize that in the long run, they're getting a better price now. It's reflected in the sale price, yet they can always refinance that mortgage if it ever comes down.
Exactly.
Right. Let's talk about all cash, though, because he's right, Andrew's right. What we have seen more than not in the last couple of years is that all cash buyer because they're not interested or need to be interested in interest rates. They don't really care about anything else. Of course, they worry about the purchase price, which is negotiable in most cases. But are you seeing a lot of cash in your business? I mean, you work on a large team. What's the ratio of all cash to kind of financing?
It really depends on the price point. I think in some of the lower price points, we're still seeing financing, and the higher price points, you're seeing more cash. So people are still willing
Higher
to part
price point,
with it.
$4 million and up?
I would say over $2 million.
Over $2 million. It's interesting because Amelia said this before, but I think the $2 million and under market is kind of slugging along, sluggishly moving along. Is that accurate? I mean, I'm seeing that. So
Yes, we're experiencing. It was very slow. I'm going to say even just 2 or 3 months ago. 2 or 3 months ago was slow. I feel like over the last 3 weeks, something has shifted. And they're like, I'm not going to buy in the summer because it's Hamptons, going away, vacation. I'm going to wrap something up right now and invest. I mean, I'm very surprised at the activity. I'm surprised. Just when you said the open houses, I haven't done public open houses in a very long time. I don't even know why. Andrew and I were like, let's do a public open house on
they
these
don't
two.
work.
This weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
This is the only weekend I didn't do it.
Okay. This weekend,
Of course.
one of them, 30
Thank you.
30 bodies in the door at one, and about 23 bodies in the door at the other. This is the 2 that have multiple offers. They only came on Sunday was their premiere.
Yeah.
And one price point is that 1,299, and the other price point is 1,975.
Are those both on the Upper West Side?
They're both on the Upper West Side,
I've heard
and
that.
they're both co-ops.
Upper West Side is roaring.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm partial to it because I live there, but
Very biased.
Very biased, of course. For 100 years. Okay.
Well, no.
Maybe 98.
Okay.
But it is moving. It's booming. It's generating the traffic. Where I have a couple of properties now, we're in Midtown West that used to always be zooming and booming, and that's kind of like ticking along, a little here, a little there. Not so great. We're going to talk about neighborhoods in a minute, though. But Jessica, when we want to talk about pricing properly, we always look, because that's really what makes apartments sell. We always look at the comparables in a building.
Yes.
Or in what I like to say a 5-block radius, okay? And even though our sellers are kind of opposed to it sometimes, want to challenge us on a price that we come to them with, how important, tell our listeners and viewers, how important is it, though, that we pay attention and we focus on comps?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important,
Inability.
especially in an era of transparency. Everything is readily available. You can look online at any site to see what sold comps were. Buyers can do that, other brokers can do that. And it's important for us to maintain a level of credibility with our pricing. People are going to look at that and, you know, you're pricing things properly for your Upper West Side properties. People are coming in droves. They recognize there could be value in that. So you have to look at the comps. You have to, I mean, present them, most importantly, what's sold in the building and similar properties around, condition of the apartment. All of those factors are important in making sure that the public recognizes that you're pricing this in a way that it makes sense.
Now, when we talk about comps, we're talking about in the building,
Yes.
and also in a surrounding 4, 5 block, 10 block radius,
Yes,
whatever, right?
yes.
Okay. So what's the
Yes.
conversation, John, with a seller when they push back and say, no, I want $50,000 more, $100,000 more? I say, why? Do you have gold bars in your behind your walls? When you renovated, did you put gold behind the walls? Of course of course I did. Perhaps there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always a challenging conversation.
It is.
Right?
I just had something happen in Brooklyn where we priced it against my advice, $825. I said it should be priced at $775 based on comps in the building nearby. Photography is beautiful, stunning location, building is perfect. And I said, look, we'll go on to your price. And if in 2 or 3 weeks there's limited activity, no offers, then we need to reduce the price to where I suggested it from the get-go. And
That's a conversation.
yeah, and what happened was they agreed to it initially, and then after time went by, I gave them updates every single week saying, hey, these are the comparables that have recently been in contract or sold, and it's time for a price adjustment. They did not want to have one, so we just took it off the market for a bit until they were more realistic.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that point up because I'm about to have a conversation with one of my sellers. We knew it was aspirational pricing, as I mentioned at the top of the show in the beginning, and I said 3 or 4 weeks, and we're at that almost 4-week point where I've got to go back, and I've already told them in an email the other day we have to have a pricing conversation. They agreed to have the conversation. I don't know if they're going to agree
Of course.
to the price.
They always agree to the conversation.
Exactly. So it's not that far off, but it has to be under that $1 million mark as a one-bedroom, even though it's a penthouse. It's magnificent. It's gorgeous. The rooftop space is private and amazing. But look, a first-time buyer is a first-time buyer, and taking everything into consideration, including interest rates. Monthly comment, by the way, have you noticed how monthly comment charges and maintenance and co-ops have escalated double digits in some cases? I mean, it's incredible. So overall, we've got to make it look attractive to buyers out there. We're going to talk about all that and so much more when we come back after this quick break. No one's going away. Talking New York Real Estate is just getting underway on this very busy Tuesday morning. Don't go anywhere.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So following along the lines of, the pricing and the comps and the tough conversations we have to have with sellers sometimes, what do we do, Andrew, when a seller says, no, as John indicated before, I don't really want to lower my price? Is it, as John suggested, we take it off a little bit until a bit of a cooling off period and then come back on, or what do we do?
I think it's a combination. There's no easy answer or one answer for all of it. One of the important things that Amelia and I have done more recently with sellers is to look at the buyer's buying power. Because if we look at what a monthly expense is from a comp from a few years ago, the monthly payment, because the interest rate was 3 or 4%, versus today when they're saying, well, that apartment sold at $2 million, so I should be able to get $2 million. Well, theory is good, but the buying power has reduced. So to show sellers the math on that has been amazingly helpful to say your buyer now can only afford to pay 1.7 for that property because their buying power, their monthly expenses would be the same as at $2 million from several years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Amelia, good point there. I mean, we talk about aspirational pricing and sellers always wanting to start high and maybe come down. But we're still, at least in my world, we're still talking to sellers who look at something in the building that sold, as Andrew indicated, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. 2014 I got the other day, and I thought, 2014, okay, I'm 10 years older, so 11 years older. Okay? Where do we go with that? How do you get them off that thought? Well, my neighbor sold for 1.5, and now you're telling me it's only worth 1.1 or 1.2?
Well, as Andrew knows, I'm going to have that conversation with one of my favorite sellers tomorrow. And it's devastating. First of all, I sold them the apartment.
Correct. Me too.
I happen to know it's part of a retirement situation. And they really deserve what it's asking. But if you do what Andrew just said, a purchase cost analysis, and you plug in the interest rate,
helpful.
2025 maintenance, the monthly is totally different than the last comp from just even 5 or 6 years ago. It's what you said. The insurance has tripled in the city. We're paying for California and Florida, so it's tripled, right? There are all these costs that they didn't have years ago. The city's inspecting and saying you have to do certain green things. So, we just have a condo right now that just came on. We got the 2025 in January common charge increase, and yesterday the board sent a note saying we have to add another, and this is a top condo, 6% increase starting in April.
Another increase, not an assessment?
No, it is a full-on additional common charge increase that is starting at 6% in April.
This is not uncommon.
And it's a top building.
This is not uncommon. I'm seeing, in a lot of cases, as I indicated before, double digits.
Yeah.
We used to crab about 4% or 5%, when it was like 3 to 4, some years, whatever, 6, 7, 8, in some cases, 10.
Oh,
12,
yeah, 10, 12,
15.
15, absolutely. And actually, the other thing that has sort of come across recently is, these co-ops and condos had, the city abatement that they would get. And now, because of certain rules with the new union negotiation, there was a condo, I'm not going to say what it is, but there was a condo in the 90s, gave up their abatement, lost 2 or 3 hours of the doorman time because the doorman's now doing the trash at night because they had to work with what the new union rule is. There are co-ops that I know of right now about to give up their abatement for the same thing because as soon as somebody goes past, I think it's 20 hours a week, it's triple what you have to pay.
It's incredible. The elephant in the room is aspirational pricing, as we keep alluding to. Jess, how in your mind, when sellers don't necessarily want to meet us where we need to be at the right price, how does that affect inventory levels? Because sometimes a seller will say, I'm just not going to go on the market then. I'll wait a little longer until maybe we get to that point. How is that affecting inventory levels? Because as I said at the top of the show, we have an inventory shortage here nationwide, but we're only really concerned about here in New York City. Shortage of apartments on the market.
Shortage of apartments on the market.
How do we square that?
You know what? Aspirational pricing is kind of it's like a real thorn in my side. So I think that any seller who decides that they're going to wait is doing themselves a disservice anyway.
Price is only going to go down potentially.
Potentially. And sometimes you just kind of have to feel the market to see if it's really worth the money. They could throw it on and say, hey, let's see what the traction is in the next couple of weeks. But I do think that it actually creates this up and down, put it on, take it off. I don't think that that's going to be doing inventory any favors either.
No, it's not. And when we're speaking to sellers who say, well, if I can't get my price, then I don't know if it's, I'm talking with one right now, I don't know if it makes sense for me to go on the market. My conversation back was, now look, and we talked about this earlier before the show, our negotiation skills are becoming more fine-tuned or should get better fine-tuned. We need to learn how to talk to our clients better than we ever did before. And my conversation was, listen, we may not get to your price ever. And if we wait a little longer, as you were suggesting, we may come back to you and say, we've got to go even lower
one of the things has been successful is for a seller to understand value. And that is bring them out and show them the direct comps as a buyer, not as a seller.
Even a seller.
And make then all of a sudden they're comparing their $2 million, $5 million apartment to another broker and seller that have priced correctly for the market. And they're like, when you are in that space, there's a real clarity of vision that starts to happen. And sellers then turn around. We did this very successffully before. And they turned around and said, "You're absolutely right. Let's, if I want to sell it, let's put it out."
But Andrew, how many sellers are willing though to? Because your point is perfectly taken. It's the right strategy, I believe. How many sellers though are willing to go out and do that exercise?
Well, part of it is
they're going to bark a little bit. We all know that
is how you interpret it for them, and part of our success in that is talking about being a smart seller. Everyone wants to be smart. And when you start talking to a seller about only the smartest of sellers will start to interpret the market correctly, they start to fall in line with the concept of wanting to be a smart seller and wanting to cash out at the right time. And we have always said, we're not in this for the short term. We're your partner. We will be here tomorrow. We'll be here next year. We'll be here 5 years from now. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I don't want to be here 5 years from now.
Me either.
So they start to think about that as realistic pricing helps them. The other part of the formula is New York is an amazingly efficient market. It's not like parts of the country where you could underprice and someone could walk in and say, I'll take it. It's undervalued here. It is perceived as a value. It will get immediate action and get bid up. The marketplace is efficient here.
Exactly.
Which I find more effective with the sellers sometimes. To say, I can never promise that there's going to be a bidding war, but I mean, how often do we do this where you price something knowing that it's going to bring in so many people in order to get to that pricing that they want?
But so many sellers look back and say, but what happens if somebody gives me, an offer at the asking price and it's too low for me? And my response always is, just say no.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Just say no.
You don't have to take anything you're uncomfortable with.
We're home.
Exactly.
I did have one seller once. I will tell you
I've
one story
had
where
a couple through
she had done in a no-frills building in Chelsea, had done a gut renovation. It was beautiful, but she decided that it had the same value as the new developments that we're building all around. I
Been
want
that,
this.
seen
I'm
that.
just as
Yeah,
good. I said, well, they have
Been there.
amenities. They have a doorman. You have nothing. You have a beautiful apartment, but your neighbor across the hall is a chain smoker, so that doesn't work.
That's
but
one of our issues.
she said, I've gone to all of these new developments. It was fun.
Let's expand what Andrew was saying a little while ago. Amelia, so value does make a lot of sense. We have to always think as a buyer, as a seller, whatever. And when I'm teaching real estate, just dropped my phone, sorry. When I'm teaching real estate, I tell students all the time, when we're talking to people, whether it's a buyer or a seller, buyer in particular, you have to feel like you're buying something today with value.
100%.
But also, you got to think about the future when you want to sell that property, right? There's got to be some kind of value at the end of that as well. So buy smartly, buy correctly. But interpret for us value and how a buyer should look at that when they're out there looking at current apartments on the market, priced however they're priced. Where does the value come? Is it that we have to tell them that, or do they come up with this on their own?
So, ironically, I was just out with buyers yesterday, and I try not to push my own thoughts on them. I try to, it's very emotional to me for them. What made you happy when you walked in? What spoke to you? And it was actually a very interesting learning lesson. I brought them to the first thing, because they live in a third floor walk-up right now. I brought them to a 3-bedroom, 5th floor walk-up that had light on the south and the north, stunning, huge kitchen, but 5th floor walk-up. Then I brought them to a condo, totally gut renovated, excellent views in every single room, doorman, gym, outdoor space, and brought them to a co-op that had an elevator, non-doorman. So this is in the $999, $969, $989 kind of thing. if you had said to me, what should they buy, I probably would have said the condo with the doorman, see how low they could get it. It was higher than all of them. No comparison. Plus, it had a washer, dryer, and all the amenities, because that's our issue. What spoke to you? I cannot believe they loved the 5th floor walk up in sort of not the greatest building. And they just said it spoke to them. The value was massive kitchen, big cook, don't mind the walk up, and the charm.
And they're young, probably.
They are young,
Well,
right?
Floor walk up.
And, and
I have one of those right now.
I can't, but I couldn't believe it. And so it's a big lesson. Don't open your mouth, because you don't know
That's correct.
their life experience.
That's correct.
It's triggering maybe an emotional memory that they loved from a childhood. My jaw, it took a lot to keep my only thing that I will throw my body in front of somebody now, because it did bite me once. I see, especially post-COVID, don't buy a brick wall facing apartment, because it's really going to be impossible to sell it. I did tell that to somebody pre-COVID. They told me, thank you for sharing. They bought it anyway, and then it took them 3 years to sell the apartment. They basically sold it for what we told them it was worth, and actually less 3 years later.
This
But
is
anyway,
why we're
yeah.
consultants,
Right.
and we guide them, or should guide them, to successful transactions.
Right.
Now or later.
Has to have a view,
One
even
of-
a street view.
One of the things that I think is important when you're working with buyers for them to understand value is to make sure they understand initially. I always say, leave your checkbook at home. We're way out before you get to that point. And make sure that they understand that this is not about buying an apartment or a house. This is a process. And when you understand value, you will be ready then to buy. So I was selling a house in Brooklyn a few year ago or so, and I told this young family that, I said, listen, this is a process. You're not out buying a house right now. You'll know when you reach that point. And we had to lose one or two for them to understand they had to waive the contingency. Oh,
Absolutely.
they had to do this.
Absolutely.
Oh, they got it after a little while, and all of a sudden they turned to me and said, we get it. We're ready.
Education.
And then we got the deal, and it's done.
Yeah, but some of these
it's
other
not
transactionally, whatever agents will not take that time and explain to them, as the consultant and the person who's knowledgeable and expert, these transactional agents push, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, and that's where it gets a little clumsy.
Well, that's where you get a referral base from not
and we
push,
talked about
pushing.
that earlier about referral base. But we talk about pricing correctly, and especially in a couple of the buildings that I sell in regularly, people bought X amount of years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. The amount of profit that they're going to make in a sale today, even if it's not where they want it to be, they're still making hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit, but yet they'll still push back and say, that price is not good enough. What do you say? Or that price is not high enough. We all want the listing. I get it. But.
I won't take a listing if I think that the pricing is that unrealistic. So I don't think it's worth anybody's time, and there's no reason. Nobody's going to come out. I had somebody who wanted their 1.4 property to be listed at 1.8. I'm not taking that one. I'm not even kidding you. But I mean, it really depends. I mean, everybody wants the highest price possible. Our goal is to get the highest price possible for our sellers, but it's that fine line between getting the highest price possible while also selling it quickly enough at a good price. Because if you price it too high, it's going to stay on the market, and then it's going to lose that perceived value.
Correct. John, what's the absorption rate typically like today? How many days on market are we seeing apartments kind of sitting there waiting to be bought?
I think it's tough. I think New York is so segmented based on neighborhood. So if you look at the West Village, could be 5 or 7 days. Could be 1 day. There was a record set at 150 Charles 2 weeks ago. So, it's very different. We have a studio in Chelsea that I think is priced really well. It's been on the market 200 days. So I think it just very much depends on where you are in the city, whether it's a studio. Studios we're seeing are a little bit tougher to sell, taking a little bit longer.
They're very hard to sell.
Where
these
two
days.
bedrooms seem to go pretty quickly. Townhouses are still very active downtown. So I think there's no right answer. It just depends what market you're in and price point wise.
I agree with that. Are you seeing things linger on the market longer if they're not priced right or based on neighborhood?
Doing this for almost 30 years now, when it's priced wrong, it's
Wow,
not selling.
he admitted that. I mean, I'm 23. Good for you.
Yeah, well, you were started in vitro.
I love him. I do.
It is no different than it ever has been. It's not going to sell if it's priced wrong.
No,
It's a I hate to bring our whole
very easy.
profession down to a simple science, but it is. It's all about pricing it right for the market.
Andrew, that's correct. I can go back 23 years ago when Michael, our manager at the time, hired me, and that's one of the things he said to me, do not price incorrectly. And I'm sitting there thinking, what is he talking about? Just say, Vince, thank you, welcome aboard, but he was right. He was right.
Yeah.
Do not price things incorrectly because they will not sell. This is 23 years ago, okay?
But sometimes,
And you all know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
And he was right.
yep, but sometimes the price might be okay, but they can't see past some aesthetic.
Well, that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
And-
we have that with one of our apartments right now.
And what do you do about that, though? I mean,
It all comes down to price again, because
Right.
that aesthetic will be worth something at the right price.
Right.
So as much as we often personalize our listings, and we're like, I know that kitchen's not everything it should be, but it's such a great apartment. And then we price it as if that kitchen is everything it should be. And you learn, you know what? At the right price, that kitchen is everything it can be, but not at the price that you might have started at.
but exactly not at the price you're going to start at.
Well, and coupled with that, it's the monthlies that are in the apartments. So when I
Well, that's
send the
tragic these
comps, it can be very, very challenging when you've got a higher monthly. So I make sure that my sellers know it's not just about the sold price of an apartment or whatever the comparables are. You've got to see how the monthlies stack up. If you've got an apartment with lower monthlies, you could probably justify a little bit of a higher price. If you have ongoing assessments, that's going to be a challenge as well.
And that's why John mentioned before that, and I have a studio listing at the moment. They're very challenging to sell right now because a first-time buyer at that price point, under 7, under 6, under, in the mid-5s, whatever, they're looking at monthlies.
Yes.
They're looking at overall monthlies. And when common charges have gone up, as we talked about, double digits, and real estate taxes, if it's a condo, are there. And if a building has an assessment, which this particular building does have, it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
I need full-time salary just to pay the monthlies. Now we got to talk about how do I pay the mortgage payment every month. So it's kind of been a big challenge for that first-time buyer. Seasonally speaking, though, do we price differently in different seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, or do we stick to the same mantra, price it correctly, regardless of the season, regardless of where it is, just do it right?
It really depends, again, on the property. There's certain properties that are very special that when Amelia and I are approached by a seller with outdoor space, we want to make sure that we're maximizing that. That is a whole nother room to make sure that they are perceived value. So are you going to put that on in February? Not your best idea.
Right.
You're going to put it on in April and May when it is traditionally towards the end of the spring market, but that's when that becomes a whole nother room of square footage.
Oh, absolutely.
And becomes very value. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer on timing. It really depends on how to maximize that individual apartment's potential.
Yeah, and it's all
Don't put
comes
it on
down-
in the summer.
No, right. It all comes down to how we discuss this with our sellers, as we talked about before. We've got to make sure they understand all of the above. I've been saying for years on this program, buyers today are a lot more sophisticated than they've ever been before. They go on sites like Street Easy, okay, and they can look at comps, and they can look at what's sold in the building, X amount of years ago, or what's currently on the building, and compare. They do their own comparison.
Oh, the good
And
old
it's
days when
magic.
co-op sales weren't recorded.
Or when people actually looked at the New York Times and called us and said, I want to hear about your apartment. Please, can I come and see it? All right, we got to take a break. We're coming back right after these messages. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. We will be right back.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, we are back, and I dropped my phone.
You want to get your phone?
I'll get it later.
I want to just add
I just
something.
keep stepping on it. Go ahead.
I want to add something to what you guys are talking about presenting outdoor space in the spring. One of the other things that is really important in the conversation with sellers is presenting the apartment. I have a seller right now, and they need, before we can put it on the market, they've got to declutter, they've got to paint it, they've got to clean it and stuff like that. You've got to make it presentable. And or you can even get a better price if it's presented better. So if they feel that strongly, they have to make it come across as that high value listing.
You are segueing into perfectly, thank you,
You're welcome.
Jessica, into what I wanted to talk about in this segment, and that's marketing and how we present and stage and get our listings, hopefully at the right price point, but how we get them to look beautiful or as good as they can, so that when people walk in, they have a good feeling and a good experience. You guys are the king and queen of it. Talk to us about that.
Well, we always say you're selling a feeling. That's the number one thing we say.
There you go.
And your feeling is your brand. So how are the people going to walk in?
I love these words, dear. Feeling and brand.
They're
Okay.
gonna walk in and
Works for
be happy. They're going to walk in and be depressed. We've had a seller have a black kitchen. We forced them to paint it white. They sold it in a week. The article that they wrote about us on East 87th Street, they went through 3 different companies because it was sort of a sad apartment. We got them to clean it up. We brought in tchotchkes, happy flowers, whatever. We raised the price $250,000 and got multiple offers in a week. So I think your feeling is so critical.
Yeah.
We say to people, they're going to walk in and they're going to go right to the brick wall. So instead of covering it up, put on, sheers, white sheers. It'll let the light in, but at least you're still being transparent about what it is.
Absolutely.
The other part of that, if I can say, is quantifying the differential. Here's what your apartment's worth as is. If you decide to invest a little money
That's a good,
in decluttering, you're going to have to move.
Oh, decluttering
so
is a
don't
big
pay
deal.
to move the stuff you're going to throw out.
Right.
Do it now. Get paid for it in your price. So if you go and do what is necessary to market it to its best advantage, you're going to look at the differential between what it's worth doing nothing versus doing something. And we had a very clear example of that a couple of years ago. We sold a 3-bedroom in a great West End Avenue apartment. We referred to the exact same sellers, exact same apartment on another floor by the sellers that closed. They were like, "We're so happy, we gave you our friends." We
Of
go
course
in,
they are.
and this was a sad apartment. It was
A&A team.
way cluttered. Cluttered.
Don't give too many specifics.
So cluttered.
But you're right.
But husband was out of work for 2 years, and he set up the whole living room as his office. And they were like, "Well, we don't have the bandwidth to do this. We just can't." And I was like, "Let me ask you a question. You're out of work now for 2 years. If I offered you $500,000, would you take the job?"
By the way, this is a true story.
And he said, "Absolutely." I said, "Clean up your apartment and you'll get $500,000 more."
I love that.
They got it.
Yeah.
It took them 6 months to clean it up. And they called me up partway through and said, "Oh my gosh, we found my daughter's wallet that had been missing for a year."
Revelation.
And I was like, "Where was it?" "Oh, it was under a pile of clothes that they
you haven't
decided to
moved in
pick up."
years?
Yeah.
That's a lot of clutter.
Wow.
Well, I have a similar story on Riverside Drive years ago. I was still working with you all in the Uptown office. I walked in, and there were 2 sofas, 9 chairs. The living room was like you couldn't even maneuver around anything. They had 2 kids, young couple, beautiful family. And I kept saying, no. This has got no, but how are we going to live? You come and show, but you leave. Then we want to sit around and watch TV at night. You don't need 2 sofas. You don't need 9 chairs. I mean, it was unbelievable. Well, fight. They listen. And I said the same thing you said before. You're moving anyway.
Right.
You're not taking all this stuff with you. Okay, you collected it over the years. Get rid of it. They did. I sold that apartment in 1 week, just by decluttering, because it was a beautiful space. Beautiful.
They have to be able to see it.
People have to
And they
feel
couldn't
like
see
it's
it.
going to be their home. If you can't
the-
imagine yourself in this space, if you can't
I
imagine that
couldn't
you want to
imagine.
live there. Ironically, when I bought my own apartment, it was a dark apartment and the price was just right. But sometimes that works. But it was like black walls, and you know my building.
Yes, I do.
But mostly people want to feel like this is where I want to live. This
Well,
is where I want to be. It is emotional.
It's
a
all
life
emotional.
a life hack I give some of the crazy busy people is I say put the drama in a box. So you have a closet, it's out of control. They don't have any time to clean up the chaos. I say go buy 10, 20 white boxes. Throw the drama in a box. When the buyer opens the door, they're just going to see serenity, just a wall of serenity. It is I highly recommend it to anybody out there because it is transformative, because they feel like you hear them, you see them, you understand they don't have the time. But if they go get these boxes and throw it all in, they haven't had to take the time to go through their stuff, but it does feel calm. We do this all the time, and it is incredibly helpful and successful to all the sellers.
Hey, John, you're a meticulous guy. So when you approach a situation, a listing, and it needs to be decluttered or it needs to be staged or whatever, what do you do? How do you convince people that they've got to make changes to their existing place in order for it to be more appealing to people, and of course, priced right?
Right. I think it's tough. You don't want to be offensive to some people, right? I think you have to be cautious with it. So if there's things that you could, so if the sellers are actually living there, there's things you can do that can be minimal, that can make a huge difference. Obviously, if no one's living there, you kind of have free reign. One big thing I'm big on is scent and smell. So, you want to walk into a place, you want it to smell fresh, smell lived in. I go to Rosewood Hotels and Edition Hotels.
Correct.
And they have this unique scent. And I frequent them because I know the scent. It makes me feel happy and warm.
I so agree with that.
If you have an apartment that smells good, you have a scent, whatever it is, and you have a big buyer tour, those buyers will probably remember that apartment that has a fresh smell. Even if it may not look perfect, if it smells fresh,
you're
clean, and
absolutely
homey,
correct.
that will stick with them.
Yeah. I mean, you have to feel good when you walk into a space, whether it's
Right.
a smell, whether it's the aesthetic, whatever it is, or a combination of all the above.
Both, yeah.
You have to feel good when, I remember 21 years ago now when I walked into my apartment, it felt good. And it still feels good all these years later. So you have to feel that when you walk into a place. I don't care what it is. I mean, a hotel, an office, whatever, because you're living there and you're going to stay there. And when you do decide to sell it someday, you've got to translate that to a buyer who walks in with their agent and say, oh, okay, yeah, I can see myself living in this space. Right?
I've had buyers actually say to me, I want a home that feels like a hug.
That's why
You're-
some
you're-
brokers like to bake chocolate chip cookies and have that, the cookie smell.
Well, I talked last week about open house when I was selling a new development building this many years ago. I would put on a pot of Sunday sauce,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
and the entire apartment would smell like
amazing.
Sunday gravy. And maybe people would walk in and, isn't this a model
Tell me.
home? I'm like, yeah. And I'm cooking my sauce for later this afternoon. Take it home.
I think
they were
part-
like, what?
Part of the marketing,
My developers loved that, by the way. They thought it was the greatest thing.
what is important is what I think a lot of brokers don't do is full disclosure.
Oh, really?
Really? If there's an assessment, make note of it. Make sure
Okay.
they understand what it is, why it's there.
Wanna
How
come
do you
and talk to
turn
my
an
due diligence
assessment?
class on Thursday?
How do you turn assessment into a positive? And there are definitely methods that we use. If it's a capital assessment, you know what? You keep a record of that over the ownership of your when you own the apartment. You can deduct that from capital gains. Do you know how many people go, oh my God, I didn't know that?
And that's why sometimes buildings choose assessments over increase in maintenance
Exactly.
for that reason.
Exactly. So always disclose, because as soon as they start doing due diligence, they're going to find it out. And then they're going to go, I don't feel
He's
comfortable.
listening in on my classes out
that's
there.
an ugly surprise.
So
There should be
no one wants surprises.
No.
And that's what
No,
we
no,
try to
no.
always be clear about when we're marketing a home, is that they're going to feel comfortable that they know everything possible about it, so that all they're really doing is negotiating the contract rather than trying to find out the dirt on why this hasn't sold.
And there is a lot of dirt that exists out there.
And hopefully there's
We
an
won't even
attorney
go
that's
there,
worth the
Vince.
wait, but it is important to do that. And it's surprising sometimes when people just kind of find out after the fact, your deal is going to fall apart. Because I think that those buyers also lose trust in you.
Listen, as I say all the time when I'm teaching due diligence, you can't sweep anything under the carpet in this town, in this industry, ever, 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 because everything, everything will creep its way out and bite you in the you-know-what all the time, 100,000%.
When you say sweep under the rug, that brings up a really important point. And this has happened on many occasions when we're talking to sellers about selling. They're like, there's some big scratches on the floor. I'm going to put a rug over it. And we're like, no, we want that exposed. Do not hide it, because at the walkthrough, they're going to find it.
And have a meltdown.
And we had one of these, and the buyer at the walkthrough literally said, this is unacceptable. I want a discount on this. And we said, look at your brochure. It's in the photo.
Put it in the photo.
So there was no surprise
God,
there.
Andrew, that is so perfect. I mean, that is so perfect. I actually have a situation right now, and every time I walk into this apartment, I roll the carpet back because they're doing the same thing, and I tell the seller what I'm doing. No surprise, okay? Okay, marketing in general. John, what is your overall marketing strategy when you take a listing, regardless of the price point, 500, 5 million, whatever it is? You're a very successful agent. What is your overall marketing strategy? What do you think about when you take a new listing and you want to get it out there or get it maximally, maximize its exposure to all of us and to the buyer community out there?
I think it starts with photography first off. I think that you don't want to deceive people. I've done some virtually staged photos in the past, and I disclose that, right? We've had a lot of instances where that has not been.
And people don't read and still walk in and say, oh.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's already kind of like one negative red flag coming into it. So, like, what else is going to be there after that? So I'm always very transparent with photography, and then teasing it out to social media. So I follow all you guys. So it's good to just kind of get it out to our community, whether you want to show it before it comes to market. And once it hits, obviously, StreetEasy, Zillow, and all the aggregators, that's when it hits the general public, and you get a lot of that.
I'm a big teaser. I like to tease stuff before it actually hits the market. What are yours? You work on a team. What is your team, and then what is your individual thought or strategy when you're putting out a new listing? And you guys are also very popular and they're very successful, and popular. Oh, of course, you're very popular too. But what do you think about? What do you think about doing?
It's funny that you say that. I love using social media for that. I think it's one of our most important marketing tools. It's really what we have that the general public looks at, and people, even other brokers, look at it. I do the coming soons. I always do a coming soon with camera to show that the photos are being taken. It's always nice to just have that one really, really cool shot to generate interest, like the week before it's coming on the market. Obviously, when it goes live, that goes through all social media channels and e-blasts. I love doing reels. And I'm trying to do a lot more of them because I think that they actually
I have to figure out how to do reels.
You can do it.
Oh, no, I can't.
You can do it. Yes, you can. You can do it. I'll take it. But it creates a moment.
How the words flashing on the thing? I don't understand it.
It's not that.
All right, you'll tell me. You'll show me.
I see a class coming up. Right.
Exactly. She shouldn't teach
Reels.
Oh, stop it. You're not
She's
doing
actually
it.
correct in what she's saying. It's just I don't know how to do it. So
I actually taught myself, and I do pretty well with them. Get a lot of good feedback and interest from them. I think that it just looks really, really cool, and that's what people are responding to now. And I do put that on Instagram, and I don't use Facebook that much, but I do use it for my real estate business because there's some people who are not necessarily on Instagram.
You must use it for
and
real estate.
You're reaching a very different audience. Our team has had a lot of fun with some other types of videos. We currently have one out, and that's called our top 5 things.
Oh, yeah.
It's really fun. So we're a team of 5, and we basically have gone around, and in this video, we each talk about one of our favorite features of this listing. You have to be creative. You have to make it something that people are generally interested in
especially
seeing.
in this industry of real estate on social media. I mean, I think every agent in the world is on social media. We must be different. We must stand out of the crowd.
I'm not on TikTok, though.
I am and I'm not. It is what it is.
I see your TikTok.
I mean, it's okay. I learned everything I know from these two and others on Diva Lane. Diva Lane, don't forget that.
Diva Lane.
Your marketing always has been extraordinary. Okay, what thoughts go through your mind when you're first taking a listing and putting it out there and wanting to hit the marketplace with a bang?
Video is your brand. Brand. So the first thing we do, we walk in and we're like, how are we going to tell this story? Andrew and I write a script specifically for the apartment. We don't use, I know AI is fabulous. My son and husband love AI. I will not go into it right now, but be careful, brokers who use AI, because somebody who does video said he went to 5 or 6 different companies and they all did the same script for 5 or 6 different apartments.
Yeah, there's a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So we write the script, we curate the music, we are in the video. We do sometimes silly things. There was a video we did once on 82nd Street where Andrew's, a baker. I know nothing about a kitchen, though I bought a pretty kitchen because I like the way it looks. And so I wore I don't mind making fun of myself. It's sort of Will and Grace-ish, like I wore like a silly hat, a very silly hat, and a very silly, I don't even know what it's called, an apron, and like just all this silly stuff. And then
We
Andrew
clearly don't cook.
Right, I clearly don't cook. And Andrew came in with the real chef hat and the real, and he's teaching me stuff with the flour, and we do a whole thing, the hidden electric, all this stuff, wherever there's hidden stuff in the apartment. And the funniest thing is, all these people walk in, the buyers, they pretend they don't see the video. And then I go, and there's hidden, I know there's hidden electric. And I don't say it out loud. I don't embarrass them. But in my head, I'm like, you just told me 3 minutes ago you didn't watch the video. They all watched the video.
Of course they do.
Now they come in and say, I've seen it 10 times.
Moving pictures are where it's at. And I say when I'm teaching class also, just like children, adults love to see things moving. Colorful things moving around. They love it.
Yeah.
The
And they
other
watch.
thing to remember about marketing all different types of properties is that the studio that we're selling is a lot of money to that seller. The $5 million
course.
apartment is a lot of money to that seller. So you can't skimp on the smaller price tags because they're just as important to that seller, and they want top-notch marketing as much as anyone does.
Of course they do.
So you can't. Sometimes when I'm representing a buyer, I walk into a low-end property and I get handed this like scrap of paper, and I'm like, oh well, I know that you've done brochures for other property, but they're obviously saying I'm not spending the money on this one.
You're not worth it.
You're not worth it.
But they are just
And all of our sellers are worth it.
They all are, and there is something for everybody, and there's an apartment for everybody. The last thought I want to make is branding, and Amelia brought this up several times today in conversation. When I'm teaching social media in school, when I'm teaching any of the real estate classes, because I so agree with you, our branding is what sets us aside, sets us apart from everybody else, the 10,000 other agents that are out there. Why am I going to work with you or you or you or you? What about you or me is different? Why can you or do you relate to what I put out there versus what somebody else puts out there? And I also say one-hit wonders does not work. One-hit wonders from the 60s and 70s. You heard a record, a 45 record, right? And you say, oh, my God.
What's a 45?
I know. And you never hear from these artists ever again, right? I know, John.
Don't even want to discuss that.
John's like, I don't know what a 45 is. But we're going to say happy birthday to Elton John today because it is his birthday. But you get what I'm saying, right? You've got to put something out there consistently, make it stick so that we can be remembered and we can do our job as a relationship agent and do it successfully for our buyers and our sellers, our landlords, and our renters. And on that note, we will be right back with my thoughts of the week. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you hear a lot about how crucial it is to have the right partners in this industry. At Roadway, we don't just move your clients, we give them an experience they'll love. Specialized services to our white glove treatment, it's all about making sure your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And if you're looking for a rewarding referral program, reach out to me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my thoughts for this week. To summarize today's conversation in New York City real estate, the market can generally be categorized into three main types, each with distinctive characteristics affecting pricing, competition, and strategy. In a seller's market, the demand exceeds supply, leading to rising prices. Low inventory means buyers compete for available properties, often resulting in bidding wars. Homes sell quickly, sometimes above the asking price. But in a buyer's market, supply exceeds demand, giving buyers more choices and negotiating power. Prices may decrease or remain stagnant due to less competition. Sellers may need to offer concessions such as covering closing costs or adjusting the asking price. This is always best for sellers looking for deals, as they have the upper hand in negotiations. In a neutral market, supply and demand are relatively equal, leading to stable prices. Neither buyers nor sellers have a significant advantage. Homes sell at their market value, and negotiations are reasonable. This is a steady market where transactions occur at normal paces. And in sad news today, Mia Love is dead at 49 years old from brain cancer. She's a former U.S. Congresswoman, first black woman elected to Congress, and a former CNN contributor. May she rest in peace, and may her memory be a blessing. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, or TikTok at Vince Rocco. And William Faulkner says, you cannot swim for new horizons until you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am grateful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.